in Christianity, they say, you honor thy mother and thy father. But there are nuances. So if you're told to honor your parents, how can you heal your trauma when you have to hold them accountable, when they might have to feel pain? So you stay in this little spot where you don't get to heal because you're holding on to the religious beliefs of what's expected of you.
Hey, come talk with us, I say TW. That's what's up. Yeah, come talk with us, I say TW.
You're afraid that the memories are going to come back, and that's completely normal. Let me reassure you that your brain will only recall what it knows you're ready to handle. Our brains know when we're ready to recall a specific memory and if we're going to be in a place to be able to manage it. It's done a fantastic job protecting you up until this very point, and it will continue to do that moving forward. You're remembering these memories all the time without realizing it somatically in your body. That's where our triggers come from. Something that I have seen working in the field is that when my clients start to manage their triggers better is when they start to recall more of the memories in image format. Trust yourself, because everything that you need to heal, all the answers, they're not outside of you. They're inside of you. They're not in another person. They're not in a book. They're in you. You're far more capable than you think.
Hi, Courtney. First of all, I would like to thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm really honored and humbled. Your presence here means a lot to this podcast. Thank you.
You are so welcome, and I'm honored to be here. And I'm grateful for the time and space that we have today to be able to have this conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you. For those that are seeing you for the first time, can you please tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got started?
Sure. My name is Courtney, and I am a trauma counselor. I started off in the field in mental health in 2004, so 20 years this February. I specialized in intensive clinical services, crisis intervention, and specialized with teens and family and those that have experienced trauma. And I've worked in many facets of the mental health field, from investigations to clinical coordination to training of foster parents in intensive care, all the way up until, really starting doing some high-end counseling work with those that have experienced some significant trauma. And that's pretty much what I've dedicated my career to. And it's kind of just been a journey of my own as a survivor. I too have been through quite a bit, and I realized that the mental health field didn't have what I needed to heal. So I said I was going to become that. I was going to figure that out for myself. And once I could do that, I was going to share that. And that's ultimately what got me here. I, had started a podcast and other things along those lines, because I know that access to mental health resources is not something that everybody has access to. And I don't feel that that type of information shouldn't be readily available to everyone. And so that's kind of been my mission.
Wow, really beautiful. Really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. You mentioned you are a trauma counselor. Can you please give us more insight on your experience in the mental health field?
Well, what I can tell you is that there are different types of counselors, therapists, psychotherapists, and we all are trained differently. Having worked in the field for a long time, I realized that if someone has trauma, no other form of therapy is actually productive. And so I have hyper-focused my education and my area of expertise in trauma healing, what trauma does to the body, how a person's nervous system responds to their environment, and really focusing on brain, mind, and behavior, and how we can overcome and repair a lot of what has happened to us. And so that happens to be the area that I'm super focused in. And it greatly differs from one counselor to the next, what our area of expertise is in.
Beautiful. So you are more specialized in the trauma recovery and the trauma informed care. So
Correct.
what inspired you to take this journey?
Being a trauma survivor myself and having experienced, complex PTSD and things along those lines, I realized that the mental health field really needed to be repaired in its own way. And when you are a trauma survivor, you can't just talk about trauma. You can talk about it for 8 to 10 years, and it's not going to help you heal. So I had to really look into somatic-based therapy, internal family systems, EMDR, and try to figure out how could one actually heal. And the reality is that trauma survivors need to relive what they've been through somatically throughout the body, while also reframing cognitively what happened to them. They need to feel to heal. And so
Hmm.
I really wanted to hyper focus in that area because I want to see resolution. I want to see
Yeah.
people overcome. I want to see people actually be able to pinpoint their resiliency. And we cannot do that effectively if there are ineffective methods being used to try to help people overcome something. It's kind of like you need brain surgery, but you're going to the eye doctor, right? Like if you have trauma and you're just going to go speak to someone and do traditional talk therapy, that could actually
Hmm.
be more detrimental to someone's healing process
Hmm.
because it's opening wounds that that person doesn't have skills to then help repair. And so that ultimately is what encouraged me and put a lot of passion within me to be like, I have to focus in this area because I really want people to identify what healing looks like for them, and then also know that everything that they need to heal is inside of them, and they can't do that unless it's an effective method or an effective modality such as trauma-informed care and trauma-informed practices.
Wow, you are truly remarkable. And I believe you have changed so many lives with this part that you've dedicated yourself in taking. Thank you so much. My next question for you would be: many trauma victims seems to be from dysfunctional family. I would say if I look at my situation, my me going also through trauma, me experiencing trauma, it was mostly because I was also from a dysfunctional family, and there's so much things that I needed to heal from my childhood, and yeah, how can people identify and understand unhealthy family dynamics?
Mhm. Well, a few things, and this is a complex topic, so I'll try to break it up a little bit. Trauma is defined by our nervous systems. And it's really important to understand that what one person may, gain some trauma with, another person may not. And when we look at families, history repeats itself because a lot of what families are experiencing is just the same behavior of the generation before it. And what happens is you'll see one generation parent a certain way, and then the next generation try to do the complete opposite of that generation, and then it keeps doing this. So there's never any resolution, right? They're not looking for like, how can we make this better? They're like, if I just do the complete opposite, then things should be better. But what we're doing is we're just creating layers upon layers upon layers of different traumatic experiences for families that they pass along because no one sits down to say, how effective was this? How could we make this better? How could we make this different? It's just that dichotomous thinking of black or white. Okay, well, they did this, so we're going to do that. And the reality is that the things you want to look for, because there's so much to say what's unhealthy, so we can look at what is healthy. Open communication. If you can see families, even when there's trauma, have open communication where everybody's thoughts, emotions, and feelings are processed, discussed, accepted, and respected, that is a huge green flag that even if the chaos in the family is traumatic in some ways, there is repair, there is resolution. Now, trauma happens when your nervous system says, I have reached my capacity to be able to manage my external or internal environment at this time. So if you think about it, when I work with families, and you can have two siblings that can come from the same family, one seems to be functioning without too much traumatic responses, and one's really having a tough time. What was the difference? We have to look at their level of resiliency. We have to look at what their support system was. So ultimately, when I work with families, I don't necessarily look for what's toxic per se. And look for what is working because that's what helps repair a family. So if you can have healthy open communication, that's one thing. A second thing is accountability. Families that aren't healthy don't have accountability. And accountability, most people think is, I'm sorry for that. Accountability is the change, right? So an authentic way of truly making change in any type of chaotic situation is I'm accountable for that behavior. And because I did that, here are the steps that I'm going to take to try to resolve that issue. Lots of families don't have the resolution. It has the sweep it under the rug. Let's just move forward. That I never did that. There's a lot of gaslighting, a lot of denial. So all of that stuff is unhealthy. But if you can find healthy elements, any family, even the most toxic families, can actually find resolution because communication is key to healing. But if people are speaking different languages, and what I mean by that is if one person's saying something, but another person is integrating it differently, they can communicate all day. But if they aren't integrating the information, if they aren't looking to change, if they aren't repairing, then everything is going to stay the same. So I could work with a client and focus on all of the unhealthy things, or I could work with a client to see what was going well at the time, what level of resiliency their families had, and try to work through that. But it's a really tough dynamic, and there are fine lines, because trauma in of itself is complex, and family dynamics and nuclear families, there's complexity within that as well.
Wow. Changing the dynamics, looking at the healthy side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, and it's
Why
not
do you?
about, it's about when you ask what are toxic things in a family, I could give you a list of like 100 to 200 different things. If I can tell you the 5 most healthy aspects of a family, that can really help someone say, is my family healthy or unhealthy? Because do all families have conflict? Yes. Do all families have people that have mental health issues? For the most part, yes, because mental health is like physical health. We all have physical health issues at times. But what really isolates a healthy family from an unhealthy family is how the family deals with conflict. That's all you need to know. So is this family healthy or is this family unhealthy? There's always going to be conflict. There's always going to be chaos at some times. There's going to be yelling here and there. There's going to be reactivity, right? We're all human. It's how we manage those times that really determine someone's level of resiliency, and if adversity will actually switch into trauma. And a family that has the ability to sit down and be like, wow, that situation was not healthy for any of us. I was overreactive. You were in denial. You were yelling and screaming. How is that productive for us? How can we do better next time? That is all that you need to actually significantly reduce a child or a teenager or even an adult from developing familial trauma, is just to have that level of processing. That is all. And if a family has that, then there isn't really anything that family can't overcome. So it's how that family deals with the conflict. That is the major difference. I hope that answered the question a little bit better.
It does. It does. What would be a profound way to deal with family conflict when you see a family that is really having lots of conflict? What would be your advice in dealing
Well,
with it?
I will say that being culturally competent is really, really important. Different cultures have different subsets of way of dealing with conflict in their families. It's very important to understand the culture that you're working with. It's very important to understand their values, morals, and belief systems. So depending on what the culture is, I would educate yourself in that, because if we think about it, like in the Latin communities or Asian communities, mental health isn't something that's talked about a lot. It's something that's kind of pushed aside. Let's not focus on that. Let's kind of move ahead. And that in of itself is typically what creates the trauma, is the inability to bring to the table what has happened. So one of the things that I do recommend in working with families and to combat that when there's chaos is getting everybody around the table to understand what is it that they believe in when it comes to mental health. What are your morals, values, and beliefs about this? What's the belief system that this family has? Understanding that is key, because if I can understand that the family may not have a massive belief in that, then I'm going to have to spend a little time with psychoeducation helping them to understand that, helping them to see a little bit. Because if they're not open to the idea, I can't reach them. So understanding where that family's coming from is key first. Once I have that information, then I can sit down and then I can have each family member bring forth what's kind of happening for them. If I don't have the family to work with, I want to understand from the individual's perspective, what's the culture of your household? What is it that looks like? When it comes to mental health, how is that discussed? When it comes to making mistakes, how does your family behave around those things? I would need that information, because having that is actually pertinent, because every family and every culture operates differently. And this is why there's no one size fits all when it comes to healing. It's very individualized. So being culturally competent in how families function, I would have to start there first, and then I would come up with a plan for the individual or for the family.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've been dealing with a very toxic relationship. At that point, I found myself still in that relationship, scared of leaving that relationship,
Mhm.
despite the fact that I know that it is not good for me health wise. It is harmful. It is dysfunctional. Why do you think some individuals find it challenging to leave?
Well, that's a great question. If you came from a very chaotic family and you're now an adult with a lot of unhealed stuff, what you couldn't repair as a child, you're going to try to recreate in your adult relationships, or you're going to attract people with similar traits so that you can try to repair it and fix it. Because if you can take, for example, an emotionally unavailable friend or an emotionally unavailable partner, and you can then somehow change them and they can show up in your life the way that you needed, your inner child then has this release of, oh, you see, I wasn't the problem when I was little because I was able to fix this person. And this person is very similar to this person from my life. That's one major reason that happens. The second major reason that this happens is did you by any chance spend time imagining your future with this person? You might have created a future with this friend or this partner. You've spent endless hours imagining what 5, 10 years down the road could look like, and you had it all planned out. That's your future. That's what you want. You've spent time bringing this person into your dreams and your wishes. It's very hard to let go of someone that you've planned a future with in your mind, in your body, and in your spirit. There's this misconception that people automatically stay with unhealthy people because they don't love themselves or because they like being treated that way. Oftentimes, it's just them trying to repair something very similar that they experienced, right? If you had a parent that was very dismissive or didn't give you a lot of time or was home and present but not emotionally there for you, you may develop a friend or a partner that's kind of the same way in some instances, so you stay with them. And there's a part of you that says, if I'm unconditionally loyal to just this one person and I give them everything, well, they're going to have to return it to me at some point. So as you can see, those are 3 different major reasons why people stay in unhealthy relationships, because they're really trying to repair something that they couldn't as children. And ultimately, that's where the downfall can happen. But in my clients, that's what I've seen, those 3 major reasons.
That sounds really right. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing
welcome.
that. At least now I know there's nothing to repair.
Yeah.
I'm not here to fix
Remember,
anyone.
you can't repair
No.
something you break. Are you the one that caused the downfall in the relationship as a child? No. So trying to repair something in someone else that reminds you of something of a caretaker, you can't fix something you didn't break. If someone turns their back on you in a relationship is not there, you don't have that piece to the puzzle that they took from the relationship. And here you are trying to find this puzzle piece to repair a puzzle that they broke when they're the ones holding the piece. And so it becomes the definition of insanity because you actually can't fix it. And not because you're not capable, but because they're the ones that have the missing piece. And we spend so much time hoping that we can recreate this missing piece to make the situation better. And sometimes we feel like we get so close, but if you didn't break it, you can't repair it. And so that can give you perspective on, I wasn't the one that walked away. I wasn't the one that made the situation the way it was. And so therefore, I can't do anything about that. And it's giving yourself permission to let go. I give myself permission to just let this go. Do you know how many adults stay in horrible situations because they subconsciously don't have the permission to leave? It's because as children, they didn't have any control over their lives and they were not told that they could make their own decisions, right, wrong, or indifferent. So as adults, we wait around subconsciously for someone to say, it's okay. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to take a seat.
Yeah,
That's where that
I
comes
really
from.
can relate because I myself, where my religion or my culture, they tell you what to do and you just obey.
Yeah.
So I think that also had some things to do with me just trying to be there, not letting go. I think.
Yeah. And, this is a sensitive topic, but you opened the door. So I'm going to step in a little bit to just, provide some information. When I work with a client that has a profound religious background or they have a very strong culture that they come from, one of the things that I tell them is in order for you to heal, you're going to have to do things that are going to go against what your religion tells you. And this is where the conflict comes in, right? Because, for example, in Christianity, they say, you honor thy mother and thy father. But there are nuances. So if you're told to honor your parents, how can you heal your trauma when you have to hold them accountable, when they might have to feel pain? So you stay in this little spot where you don't get to heal because you're holding on to the religious beliefs of what's expected of you. So I tell my clients, if they are religious, I'm going to need you to trust me that your religious beliefs and that spiritual path is here and your healing journey is here. And when you get healed, you can reconnect with it and determine what from your religion you're going to take and maybe what no longer serves you. And that's okay. So I'm glad that you brought that up because you're 100% right. That is very, very, very true.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
When someone's support system, such as family or a partner, engages in behaviors that, exacerbate their trauma, how can they navigate those relationships healthily?
That is an amazing question. And that's because what I'm going to say is not easy to hear, but I'm real, raw, and relatable. And I'm going to be honest because honesty is the only way we can truly heal. There comes a point in time that when you're healing, you have to bring forth the version of you and then the version that you want to be. And you have to ask yourself, friends, family, external environments, and everything in between, what parts of them are supportive of this version that I'm going to be? And what parts of them benefit from the version that I was and that I am right now? You have to ask yourself that question because people leave, people get offended when people have boundaries. And it's because when we were toxic, because when we're all unhealed, we're codependent, we're enmeshed, we're doing a lot of different things, correct? The people around us really benefit from the unhealed version of us. It suits them. Imagine how it is to have someone that never says no, lends you money, always there for you, lets you walk all over them. And then all of a sudden, the person that used to allow you to do all of that says, no more, I have a boundary in place. They don't like that. So what you'll find when you're healing is that your immediate foundation of friends and family starts to rumble. Things start to shake up. And you have to make a decision that is no longer based upon how to keep somebody else's peace, but how to foster your own. And that's where boundaries come in place. So if you find that you have a very triggering family member that is bringing up a lot of stuff, I'm not saying to run from your triggers because triggers are text messages from your body saying, hey, is this okay? But if it's too much, too soon, too quick, it can keep putting you in fight or flight. So you have to have a boundary and you have to say, you know what, to said family member, I'm really going through some growing right now. And I really need to kind of take space from this relationship so that I can work on some things that I have with myself. I notice that when I am in your presence, we seem to be getting into a lot of arguments. And I seem to find this very triggering for me. I hope you can understand. And if that person can't, there's nothing that you can do. But you're going to need the boundaries to protect your internal peace. You cannot heal in the same environment that contributed to you feeling broken in the first place, right? So if this family member or this friend has, negative impacts on you and your mental health, you can communicate that to them. I feel like whenever we're together now, you're saying things that are really upsetting me. I'd love to be able to talk about this because I do have hope that we can move forward. If that friend or family denies that, then you put a boundary in place and you say, well, until you're willing to accept your role in our friendship, in our relationship, in our familial relationship, I'm going to have to take a step back because I'm going to assume that you don't value me the same way that I value you. I'm going to hold space for you, though, because I do believe that we can come to an understanding. That tells that person, hey, I still want you in my life. I just can't accept it this way. So boundaries. And the problem is that most adults have problems setting boundaries because what's the first boundary you learn as a child? The word no, which is a full sentence. And when you're little and you tell your parents no, what do they say? Don't you say no to me. You hurt my feelings. How could you say that to mom or dad? How could you say that to me? So when you were supposed to learn your autonomy and to say no, now as an adult, having to put boundaries in place with family feels yucky because you feel like you're hurting them. When you're not, you're just hurting yourself. So I know it's complex. Hopefully that answers the question, but that's the only way to effectively protect your peace and also give a learning opportunity to that family member. If you don't have a boundary in place, you hurt yourself and that person misses out an opportunity to be like, wow, I think I would like to really work on this behavior. I love Kelly. I don't want to hurt, or I love this person. I don't want them to feel a certain way. Let me work on that. If they choose to do that, they become better and you become healthier. If they choose not, you're still healthier and they can decide when they're ready to do that for themselves.
Correct. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I truly love your perspective and your insight on this crucial topic. Thank you. So I want to talk about imposter syndrome
Sure.
because people who experience trauma, they battle with imposter syndrome. Can you please tell us how we can overcome this imposter syndrome when it is actually holding us back?
So for those that may not be super aware with it, imposter syndrome is where there is a part of us that feels like a fraud, right? So let's bring this full circle. Imposter syndrome you see a lot in people who are neurodivergent, people that have ADD, ADHD, ASD, and stuff. So imposter syndrome is huge in that community, but you can also see it with those that have trauma. For example, if you grew up in a household with parents that were so critical of you all the time and reminded you that you weren't doing things correctly, then you grow into an adult with this high level achievement of I have to get everything right, and you start doing a lot of great things. You graduate college, you get a really good job, you're doing all these amazing things. The imposter syndrome is built in the middle because your inner self says, how can I be this person that does all these great things and accomplish these things? Oh my God, they're going to find out. They're going to find out that I'm actually a failure. They're going to find out about me. And that is because that's how they were raised. So a part of their personality was raised to believe that they're no good. And then another part of their personality that wanted to prove that person wrong was able to accomplish things. So something in between says, there's no way that this person that can't do anything right could actually accomplish this. Where did this come from? And it creates a massive amount of anxiety where people become so high functioning and high achievers that they set goals that are almost so high it's impossible to meet, but they do it to try to prove to themselves that they actually are that person. And so the best way to function through that and to heal imposter syndrome is to say, what were the messages I got as a child regarding my ability to do things? Now, someone might say that didn't happen in childhood. I guarantee it did, even if you ended up in a relationship and that's where adult trauma started. Because sometimes people will say to me, I had a great childhood. It was only until I was an adult that I met someone. That's not true, because you're not going to attract toxic as an adult if you didn't see it as a child. So it started there. So I tell people, let's do the shadow work. What messages did I receive as a child when I made mistakes? Wow, mistakes. You can't make mistakes. What messages did I receive as a child when I didn't do something to the standard that my parent wanted me to? You start to explore that, and then you start to see, wait a minute. No wonder why I feel like I can't be this person, being able to do all of this because of all of that. That's where it starts. It's just the self-awareness. It's just the inner shadow work. Because once you can understand where the message came from, now step 2 is cognitive reframing. So the next time you have a thought of, oh, there's no way that I can do this, you'll say, wait a minute, what evidence do you have to believe that you can't do this? And you do it out loud. I don't have any evidence. Do you always accomplish everything that you set your mind to? Well, yes. Okay, so there's nothing to say that you're incapable of doing this. No, okay, that is not my thought. I release it. That's what I tell all of my clients to do. Cognitive reframing out loud for a trauma survivor literally rewires their brain. When you think about it, all these terrible things you call yourself, oh, you're so stupid. Oh, no one could ever love you. That's not your voice. Those are not your beliefs. Those are the belief systems of the adults in your life that projected that onto you. And I can give you a very basic example. Someone may say, my parents never said that to me. Okay. Did you ever have a parent that was busy all the time and every time you asked them for something, they were like, all right. They made you feel like a burden because you were taking them away from something when they were busy. That's all that it can take for someone to feel that they are a heavy weight in somebody else's life. Very little things like that can have massive impacts. They're called micro traumas. They can have these massive impacts as we move into our lives. So honestly, that's the best way to work through it. Ask yourself where it comes from, do the shadow work, and then secondly, speak out loud when you hear it. What evidence do I have to this? Well, I don't. Okay, well, then I'm going to have to release that thought. It doesn't belong to me. I promise you, you do that every time something pops up, and in 6 weeks, all of a sudden you realize that you don't have to do it out loud anymore. Because all of a sudden a bad thought will come and your brain will automatically say, that's not my thought, bye. You go, wait, where did that come from? So remember, when you were little, you didn't have to be called stupid one time to think you were stupid as an adult. You heard it all the time, which means you're going to have to hear from yourself out loud all the time. You're actually quite intelligent. You're quite intelligent until your brain replaces that negative thought with a positive one. That's how it works.
You are truly remarkable.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being incredible.
Thank
I
you.
want to touch on the shadow work.
Sure.
What would be your advice, or what would be the steps to take in order to go through the shadow work? Because when we say shadow work, a lot of people would see it as a very
Yes.
difficult thing to do. Like, I don't want to see this part of me. I don't want to actually know that other side of me. So, how can we do the shadow work without feeling like we are without feeling scared of ourselves?
So I love this question, and I'm going to be very honest about how you would do this. So there are more people that feel the way that you feel in this moment and that you're sharing with me than there are that feel to the contrary. So most people say, I don't want to get to know the dark parts of me, because your shadow is the parts of your personality that you aren't conscientious of, but that you react from, right? The deeper parts. Getting to know that can be very scary. So I actually do workshops on this. I have an online healing community where people can come in, and I do workshops to teach them how to do shadow work. But before you do work, that type of work, you have to work on self-acceptance. Everybody right now is focused on self-improvement, self-improvement. But can you honestly improve upon something that you don't accept or that you don't love? No. When you love something and you accept something as is, not to make excuses for the parts of yourself that you're not proud of, but to say, I love you. And I know that this part of me was created for survival. And I still have to love myself for it, and I can accept it. The moment you accept something as yours is the moment you have it as yours to then change. Most people want to do the shadow work and change parts of themselves while still hating a good portion of themselves and rejecting, right? That's internal family systems teaches us that there's no bad parts. And we have what's called exiles within us. Those are the parts of us that we are shameful of and that we push away. How can we effectively allow something to grow and shift and change if it requires love, but yet we're rejecting it at the same time? So before shadow work, you got to work on radical self-acceptance. It's saying, you know what? I used to manipulate people to get my needs met because I didn't know how to ask. So I'd kind of make people feel bad subconsciously, hoping that they would say yes to me. I did that because my needs weren't met, not because I was a bad person and I wanted to hurt people. I forgive myself for that, and I'm proud of myself that at least I just didn't give up. Now I need to love that part. Now I need to grow that part, and I get to understand that part because I'm not afraid of it. I'm not disgusted with it, and I'm not shameful of it. When you're a survivor, you don't have time to say, how could developing this part of my personality impact me in the future? That would require not being in fight or flight. When you're in fight or flight, you have to find a coping mechanism immediately. You can't learn when your hippocampus and your amygdala and every different part of your brain are in this place of chaos because you're just merely surviving. So sometimes you're going to make some mistakes. If you can't forgive yourself or accept yourself for the things maybe that you've done that now you don't accept of yourself, how can you truly be able to spend some time getting to know it when you're fearful of it? So that's the first step. And that's why I do workshops on that, because it is complex. And most people will run away from it because they're scared. I don't want to get to know that part of me. But that's why I have that online healing community and for people to learn those different things, because I remember that I was afraid too. I didn't want to do it. And I remembered that once I understood that, I could. So that was an excellent question. I'm glad you asked that, because I think a lot of people, 9 out of 10 people, feel the same way.
Thank you so much, Courtney. We go on a quick short break and we will be right back for more questions. Guys, we go on a short break and we will be right back.
Are you triggered by peace and calmness? To the point where it feels like you're crawling out of your skin and you don't know why it is, and everybody keeps telling you you're just self-sabotaging? As a trauma counselor and a survivor, I have seen this time and time again. Children who grew up in chaos become adults, in most cases, that are significantly triggered and dysregulated by peace, calmness, and positivity. And that's because none of those things feel like home. And all we want as adults is to be seen, heard, understood, and feel at peace and at home. And so what are we trying to do to recreate those scenarios for ourselves? Is project what we believe home to be in our lives now. It isn't that you're self-sabotaging and that you don't want good for yourself. It's that it doesn't feel like home, and you're just trying to find that comfort. And the chaos that you grew up in, although it's not healthy for you, is comforting on some level. So if this resonates, it's time to make peace your home.
So this is the part where you can drink water if you want to use the bathroom, if you want to check your phone.
Sure. I'm good. I did all of that beforehand so I could give you my full attention.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm gonna cut this part out of the video when I'm editing
Sure.
it.
Do you need any
Nice.
clarification on anything that I said? Because I know trauma is complex, but I want to be honest and I want to give more information than what's out there. There's a lot of people that gatekeep information because they want you to keep coming. I love when
Yeah.
clients graduate from therapy and they don't ever have to come back. That means I did my job. So I want to give as much as I can. So if you don't feel I've answered your question directly or I gave too much, just let me know.
Okay. 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 I am trying my best to think of more questions based on the things you say.
Yeah,
But if when I'm watching the video again and more question is coming up, I will definitely reach out to you.
absolutely.
Thank you. So we are going back on the recording. Hey Courtney, welcome back. Hi guys, welcome back. Courtney, what practices or tools would you recommend for people to build self compassion and self confidence in the face of trauma?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that because self-compassion and grace is something that you're going to need if you're going to do trauma work. And self-compassion comprises interconnectedness. It means that you got to say, I'm not the only person in the world that have experienced this. I'm not alone. Knowing that you're not alone is helpful. Self-compassion requires you to sit with yourself in your toughest moments and not judge or shame yourself. And it can look like something like, you know what? I made a mistake. I was reactive. I said things because I had unmet needs. I'm going to take accountability for this and I'm going to use this as a learning opportunity to get better. Versus, you're so stupid, you say all these terrible things, no one's ever going to like you. Self-compassion is understanding that you are an imperfect being living in an imperfect world and perfection does not
Correct.
exist. And having self-compassion for yourself is something that is very difficult to do when you don't know how to do it. And so what I tell my clients, we practice when I work with them, the first month is on self-compassion. And it's learning to find the small wins that you have on a daily basis. It's learning to have grace when you're having a tough day. It's learning to understand that in life, you're either winning or you're learning. You're never a failure. You'll never know success if you've never failed at something. And failing is part of the journey because you can't learn if you know everything. It's having that compassion that I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm working on learning at them at the same time. That's self-compassion. We practice compassion, and I tell my clients this. You have to treat yourself as if you're someone that you love and care for, because that's exactly what's missing in your life. You treat yourself so poorly because it's how you were treated. If you only treated yourself like someone you were responsible for or like your best friend, you would heal so fast, your head would spin. Because the very love and compassion that we give to others when they're suffering is exactly what you need in that moment. So when my client says, how do I know what to do for myself? I'll say, if you loved yourself, or if you were the person that you loved, what advice would you give them? And that's exactly what you do because you know what to do internally. It just doesn't apply to you because there's a disconnect from you having needs as a human. When you grew up, your needs probably weren't met or they were pushed aside. So as an adult, we don't have needs and we don't recognize that we have needs. We don't recognize that we deserve compassion. We just see that other people need that. And if you can incorporate those tiny little things, you can honestly heal a lot quicker because love ultimately is what you've missed out on. And if you can give that to yourself, you don't ever have to rely on another person to do that for you.
So thank you so much for sharing that. Self compassion is truly something that we all need to look deep in because indeed accepting yourself and then giving yourself the grace to love and to say, I choose me. This is a time for myself without feeling the guilt or without feeling bad about it.
Mhm.
This is really beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're right.
So I want
Yeah,
to touch on family here. Yeah, go on.
Oh no, I was saying it's very important. Go ahead.
It is. It is. I want to touch on family healing and trauma.
Sure.
What would you recommend for people who are seeking to heal from family trauma?
Well, generational trauma and intergenerational trauma is very complex. And the reality is that many people struggle to heal while also having a bunch of people not wanting to heal from the same family. So let me, before I go into that, explain that when you come from a family where there's a lot of trauma and you decide to be that generational curse breaker, It's very hard sometimes for our family to want to jump on board. Want to know why? Because they look at you and they see you doing so well, and it says to them, there's no excuse why you can't be doing it. You guys come from the same family. So they push you away and they make you the bad guy. So sometimes it's very hard to heal when you're coming from generations of abuse. And that's why you see people separating themselves from their families. So ultimately, it comes down to a few factors. I teach clients that it's okay to send one big family text message. If you don't want to have personal conversations, you can send an email and CC all of your family members. Hey guys, just wanted everybody to know that I'm starting my healing journey. I'm going to therapy to address some things that were traumatic for me growing up. And here are the things I'm no longer going to accept in my life. And I would love if everybody could be part of this journey with me. Understand that at times, things might be difficult to heal, but I do have hope for this whole family. You're going to see that 2 out of 10 people respond. Everybody else is going to be like, whoa, I don't want anything to do with that. It's hard when you're the curse breaker because you're going to do it alone for a little while until people around you start to see. They're either going to say, I want what they're doing or I don't want what they're doing. The issue is that people struggle because if I heal, who am I going to be? My family's going to want nothing to do with me. I'm not going to be able to tolerate my family. And it comes down ultimately to the choice of what matters more to you. Having your big family or having a quality of life because you only have one to live that you could never experience for yourself if you self-sacrifice your own healing path. And it's tough. I wish there was an answer that I could give you that could guarantee that your family could stay with you and that you guys could do it all together. But ultimately it comes down. And sometimes we have to plant seeds with our family, and maybe it doesn't happen right away, but maybe 5 years from now, a cousin or a sibling says, hey, remember that conversation you had 5 years ago with me about your journey? I'm just starting mine now. So sometimes it doesn't happen in the beginning, but it doesn't mean that it won't. And it doesn't mean that you going through this process and changing doesn't benefit your family, because it does, because you're changing the lineage. You're doing something different about the generations to come. So even if they're unwilling to partake in it now, at some point in the future, they will benefit from having more healthy people in their lives. That's the only thing that I honestly can say about that, because it's so complex and it's very painful to try to heal from generations of trauma when you have to do it by yourself.
Correct. Beautiful. Breaking generational trauma. Courtney, what would be your last advice for the people watching?
Well, that even on the toughest of days where you're still in pain and crying over what you've been through or feeling like there's no possible way it's going to get better, you are still healing. Healing doesn't stop on your bad days. Healing doesn't stop on the days that you don't want to get out of bed. Healing is lifelong and continuing. So even when you're not as active in your therapy, you're not as active in your self-care, you're not as active in your social life, your body and your nervous system is still healing. And understanding that means that's compassion and grace for yourself. Just because you're hurting or just because you're having a bad day doesn't mean that you're never going to get there. Understanding that trauma healing actually looks like a rocking horse. Okay? People think it's like this. It's not. People think it's like this. It's not. It's like this. Trauma healing is a little to this side, a little to this side, a little to this side. It's a rock. And as you slowly rock from between feeling good and not feeling good and feeling good and not feeling good, as you do that, you're still progressing forward with a little sway. There are going to be more days when you're rocking this way and more days when you're rocking like this. But over time, the rock slows a little bit and you gain more control over the not so happy days. And I just want people to know that even on the rockiest of them, they're still fully in control and their capacity to heal is not diminished.
Beautiful. Thank you for that
You're
profound insight. I truly love your perspective on these crucial topics. And I would like to say thank you to you, and the work you've put in out there. It is really, really impactful. I mean, the work you and your husband, Jay, is putting out there is really impactful.
Thank you.
And you've dedicated yourself to helping others heal. It is really beautiful. Really, really beautiful. Thank you so much.
That's
We
why
have
we
come to
call
the
our podcast In It Together, because we need to do it together. We didn't break by the hands of one person. It took a lot of people to hurt us, and it's going to take people to help us heal, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So thank
Love
you.
it.
Appreciate you having me
Love
on.
it. Where can people find you?
TikTok is ask.Courtney. You can find me on AskCourtney on Instagram, AskCourtney on YouTube, AskCourtney on Facebook. It's pretty much all the same. I have a podcast called In It Together with Jay and Courtney. And I also have an online healing community, which is linked on all of those websites. So if you can't get the healing or support that you need, it is a sliding scale for people who need it. And lastly, yeah, I think that those are the major platforms that you can find me on.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Guys, go check her out on ask.Courtney on almost every social media platform.
Yep.
She is wonderful. If you are looking to walk through your healing journey with someone, she is your person. Please go check her out. And Courtney, thank you so much.
You are very
We
welcome.
have come. Thank you. We have come to the end of today's podcast. And guys, we've come to the end of today's podcast. Please click on the bell icon so you'll be the first to be notified whenever the videos are uploaded. Kindly subscribe to the channel and leave your comments down below. Courtney, you are amazing, and I hope to continue staying in touch with you.
Absolutely. I'll come on anytime that you would like. If you have a specific topic, I'm more than happy to help support you in your process as well. I appreciate what you're doing in giving a platform for others to be able to hear and to learn, so I'm equally grateful for what you're doing for the healing community as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Take care.
Then I see you and take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Professionally, that's
Something that life happens. They don't even believe it. They don't like what you're doing. These people are jealous.
Oh, what's poppin', my
So we believe that everyone has a mental health issue or they are healing.
And God forbid something happens tomorrow. I don't do that.
It's really important to be self-aware of what
So that's how I improve on.
we like and what phase of life we are in. We need to be really understanding of our own situation.
Yes, we are the poorest in this country. So me, everybody sick, mental health, everybody needs therapy, and even the therapy needs a
The life
therapist.
you are living. You have to be happy with what you have.
Don't even look like it. Just
Now give up loser.
go on your best.